Hello and welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage in the rainy state of Maine today. For the last few days, I've been picking away at this Reid case Turbo 400 that I'm building. Probably longer than that if you include, going through and making sure I have all the small pieces to assemble the transmission from scratch. It's a whole lot easier to strip a whole unit and just replace or update whatever you're going to do. And the base of the transmission and all its parts are still there to reuse. When you start with nothing or individual parts, it takes a lot longer. I used to work with an old guy who once told me that if you built a brand new truck from scratch, he was shopping for trucks at the time, that it would cost you about 4 times as much as buying a whole vehicle assembled. He was an avid reader of the old Popular Mechanics, and he probably read it in there, but he was a great guy and I really miss him. But back to the transmission. I'm not quite at the halfway point, and I realized I hadn't filmed or talked about anything, and if I was to complete this transmission that's been sitting here in the last few videos without at least talking about it, there's going to be some people upset with me. So let's talk about what I've done so far. The basic concept of the build is taking my normal 800 to 1,000 horsepower recipe and adding the input shaft, main shaft, and output shaft, the much heavier duty versions, thus upping the the limit as to how much power it will take, and it's also getting an ATD first and second gear lead valve body, combined with all the normal goodies I put in a transmission. So it's going to be a really nice unit. It's a CK Performance 40 spline forward drum and input shaft. The only main shaft I had, and I've been saving it for something else, but I'm going to go ahead and use it. If you shop for Turbo 400 main shafts, most of them are rated 1,000 horsepower, and they're about $250. This is a JW rated for 1,500 plus horsepower, and it lists for about $540. But it's the only one I have, and I'm going to use it, so it's a nice upgrade. So I put all the miscellaneous doodads in the case, and I've assembled as high up as the intermediate clutches. I mentioned when we went over the case a couple videos ago that the intermediate pressure plate that comes with the case is splined all the way around instead of having a void like this stock one. But dimensionally, it was 435 thousandths, just like this stock one. So there's lots of ways to measure, because I'm upgrading to the 4-clutch 4L80E intermediate clutch pack, to go ahead and figure out how much I was going to have to cut off the fully splined pressure plate that I only have one of, so you don't want to make a mistake, or you'll be trying to figure out ways to cover that. And I'm glad to say there was no mistakes made, because I just made it really simple on myself. The Reid pressure plate and a stock one were the same. I went and grabbed a stock 3-clutch intermediate clutch pack setup and just put it in the case and checked the clearance. And everything was fine. Perfect, actually. And then I took my 4-clutch pack setup. This isn't it, but it's one just like it. With the same 435 thousandths pressure plate, and I could measure the thickness of both of them, and I was only 20 thousandths difference. This was 20 thousandths too thick, because I wanted to get back to the clearance I had with the 3 clutches. Pressure plate's the same thickness, so I just put it in the lathe. Bear with me. And I clamped it in here, and I cut this surface right here, 20 thousandths. And it's perfect. Simple. You could overcomplicate that a lot, and in the past, trust me, I have. Sometimes my brain overcomplicates things, but in this case, you could do it without measuring it. You could cut the pressure plate to make it the same stack height as a 3-clutch sitting on the bench. You could just put it right next to it. If you had no way to measure anything, but you should have a way to measure things if you're going to build transmissions. But in this case, it's that stone simple that you could just put it next to each other and make them the same height if you were happy with the clearance you had to start with. So I hope that makes sense. It did when I started this, and now I wonder if I made it muddier. So the doodads that I spoke of in super technical terms were the entire linkage for park, all functional. The Sonex shift shaft is M10 1.5, where your stock Turbo 400 was 3/8 fine. This shaft also fits a 4L80E without the neutral switch on the outside. So maybe that's why they made it metric. Doesn't really matter because it comes with the nuts for both sides. So that's all brand new and nice. This is the inside of the plug I installed because they give you 2 dipstick possibilities. I'm leaving it on the stock side. So this has a nice aluminum plug with an O-ring, and you actually put a screw and a washer, and of course a little knob of Loctite so it doesn't fall apart. It is a race car after all. I went around and put in all the pipe plugs, the M&M dump valve in place of the governor cover, an external view of the passenger side dipstick plug, assembling the lower unit up till the intermediate clutch pack went relatively easy. Getting the band past the extra lugs, it fits, but it's a tight fit. You have to go in perfectly straight and square, whereas the stock one, you can kind of angle it in there, and it's a lot less difficult. But with a little bit of, casual fumbling, you can get it down in there. After machining the pressure plate in the lathe, I had to go around and touch up each of the teeth because it's a really, both the center support and the pressure plate, the case is brand new and tight, so everything goes in perfectly straight, but nothing will go in at an angle. So it's not, slightly wore in like a stock case would be. Still completely functional stock case, but everything's, clearanced a little bit. This is brand new and tight. And they tell you to put the giant snap ring with the groove down above the valve body. Doesn't really matter because it's 360 degrees, but the instructions called that out, so that's what I did. And getting that giant snap ring in there wasn't too bad either. With a couple of screwdrivers, gently worked it into place. You've heard me say it many times before, but there really is no such thing as a bolt-on part. This is top tier stuff. A few years ago, I did a Reid case conversion, which included the $250 roller tail housing, much like this one. And for the longest time, I had the O-ring that came with it hanging on my bench down there, one of the other transmission benches, because it was too big for the groove. It hung out by 3/16 of an inch at least. You could probably cement it down in the groove, but when I hold it up the back of the case with the O-ring in the groove, there's not a lot of squish here, so I don't trust it. So I was thinking, I'll go dig through my 4L80E kits and get a quad ring like the 4L80E uses. And if you pay attention, the brake drum Turbo 400s, when you take that little double bearing aluminum tail housing off that has a brake drum attached, the Turbo 400 used a quad ring. Everything else used a gasket. But in that application, somebody thought they should have a quad ring. And in this application, they're probably trying to make it probably more serviceable. A gasket over time may rip, where this you might be able to remove and put it back on. I don't know what the thought process is, but I wish for the money they would include an O-ring that was the right size. Like I say, if I wanted to monkey around, I could probably get it in there. But this transmission's going to Australia. And the last thing I want to do is have a stupid leak. I can confidently build the whole transmission, no problem, but it's little things like this that, as a transmission builder, will keep you up at night. It's the stupid stuff that you got to prevent that are just annoying leaks. So I went ahead and put a gasket on. There's no reason not to in this application. If I hadn't brought it up and talked about it, we wouldn't be talking about it. But for the money, it should have the correct O-ring. It should have a quad ring, the right size. Now, I don't know if I mentioned, I tried this on there. I can get it in the groove. It's a little tight, but there's a lot of squish to get the tail housing up to the back of the case, and I don't want to crack it. So in this case, the gasket was the best answer. I get asked pretty regular to talk about air checking, and this is a prime example where it's going halfway around the world. It would be nice to air check everything, and that's a great idea. However, I have air checked the intermediate case by just blowing up through the center support hole. I can watch the clutches apply, so I know that's going to work. But when you put Teflon scarf cut seals, and even the solid ones, those might air check better, but the scarf cut Teflon, you fill the groove full of petroleum jelly and you push the scarf into it. So that Teflon ring is tight in the groove. It's not going to seal air. You'll get mixed results when you air check. I like to go ahead and put the direct drum in, and I take the little snozzle that comes with a tube of silicone. I stick it down in this one because there's a passage, so it does a nice job blocking the hole. And then you can blow air in the other side, and you can hear the direct clutch come on when you're using the steel rings. When you use the Teflon rings that are cemented in the groove, until the ATF washes that away a little bit, it's not going to seal. In fact, I tell people to run the vehicle while you're filling it with fluid with the wheels off the ground and let the ATF wash that Vaseline out of there so the rings can start doing their job. It doesn't take very long if I didn't tell people, as long as they didn't go abuse it right away or think they have a problem. But you got to get the Vaseline back out of it. It does an excellent job letting you assemble it, but don't be surprised when it doesn't pass the air check. So in this case, you just got to be extra careful assembling everything. Be confident in your work and trust that it's going to be okay, because it's the same story checking the forward drum. If you set it on the back of the pump, there's 2 Teflon seals there, the same ones you use in the center support, and you got them glued in the same way. And it's probably going to not pass the air check, or it's going to leave you doubting it. So just be careful on your assembly. Lube it all up, put it together, and hope for the best. So I'm going to continue assembling the sub-assemblies. I need to do the direct drum, forward drum, and the pump. I'm waiting on the valve body, but I'm just trying to get most of this done. It's nice, clean, easy work. And, it kind of beats stripping an old greasy transmission, which is the next thing I need to do. But I'll get another day's worth of playing with this, probably carefully assembling all the sub-assemblies, and I can get it ready for the valve body. I have the instructions for the ATD 1+2 valve body, so I can go ahead and modify the modulator valve, and I can have it ready to put the valve body in when it gets here. So that's that. Hope you're having a great day. I'll check with you in a day or so.